Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners podcast. My name is Brandon Drum. I'm here with Parker Thune, and it's SEC Media Day, folks. Parker, Jesse, Brian, myself have actually been in Dallas covering the SEC Media Days. No. We don't pay people and tell people we're credentialed. We actually are. Any comments, Parker?
No, I have no comment on that.
I'm always the bad guy. Yes, there are some out there that are pretending, but that's neither here nor there. Anyways, Parker, we're officially covering an SEC football team.
That is true. We are, well, I guess it doesn't really matter if we're SEC ready or not. We're in the SEC.
That's right. Let me ask you this before we dive into all the talk, all the banter and everything that's been going on with the media and the players and everything. What stood out most to you over the last 2 days? I have my thoughts, but what are your thoughts? And we got another day. Jesse and I will be down here to cover Alabama, Mississippi State, Texas, and Florida tomorrow, right?
I believe that is correct, yes.
Yep. So we got some more coverage coming for y'all, but what stood out to you? Like there are some massive differences between the Big 12 and SEC, notwithstanding just the conference itself, but I'm talking about the event as a whole.
Yeah, SEC Media Days, let me tell you, and we all experienced it, and all of us on the Oklahoma beat can probably attest to the same message. SEC Media Days as an event is leaps and bounds larger, and there's more of a palpable buzz, and there's really just everything about it is Media Day on steroids compared to what we've been used to with the Big 12. And that's no knock on the Big 12, but of course the mantra of the SEC is it just means more. And you definitely sense that being at Media Day. There were over 1,200 credentialed reporters. 1,200 across, 16 SEC programs. So if you want to break it down, you want to assume there were, gosh, I don't know, let's call it 400 national members of the media that were there at SEC Media Day, which is probably generous. But even so, that's if you make that assumption, you're still looking at 50 credentialed reporters per program in the SEC. I mean, this event is and was bonkers, Brandon. And I think what stood out to me the most, and it's kind of commensurate with what expectations were going into the event, but I think it's been solidified, having had conversations with a number of national media members and a number of beat reporters and radio hosts and what have you that cover other schools in the SEC. Expectations for Oklahoma are really not that high in 2024. And I don't think you mind that.
No,
I don't think you mind that if you're Brent Venables or one of the individuals in that Oklahoma locker room. Obviously, fans are going to say we deserve more respect. And there's probably a case there. Sure, the SEC should probably tip their collective cap a little bit more than they have when we're talking about the rest of the conference, the rest of those fan bases that comprise it, when you are mindful of Oklahoma's tradition and history and all of that. But you gotta prove it in the SEC, Brandon. Before you're given the benefit of the doubt, you got to go and earn it. You got to go and prove that you belong. And we all have plenty of reason to believe that Oklahoma belongs, right? We have no reason to think that Oklahoma is going to be a fish out of water in the SEC. And plus, even if you are a fish out of water, it's not like they can cast you off. Vanderbilt's been in this conference for how long now? But I think we all have the expectation that Oklahoma is going to compete.
Vanderbilt, the Commodores catching strays.
Well, I'm sorry. They're not even playing the same sport as the rest of the SEC right now when it comes to football. But you got to go and earn it this fall. And if and when you do, I think there will be some more respect given to Brent Venables and the Sooners. But
Yeah.
it's very clear what the rest of the country thinks of Oklahoma. And again, we all kind of had this belief or this perception of the national narrative ahead of time that Oklahoma, especially coming in with a really, really tough schedule, was going to take some lumps in year one. But that seems to be a consensus across the board. That's not cherry picking here and there. There are a select few that are higher on Oklahoma than the rest. But for the most part, the expectation everywhere else at every other in every other one of the 15 markets across the rest of the SEC, as well as nationally, it seems to be the consensus that Oklahoma is nothing more than a middle of the road SEC program in 2024. Babbel is a proud sponsor of OU Insider and the Under the Visor podcast. The best way to learn a language is immersion, living where the language is spoken and using it every day. But if that's not in the cards this year, you can still learn a language the second best way, and that's with Babbel. Be a better you in 2024 with Babbel, the science-backed language learning app that actually works. Don't pay hundreds of dollars for private tutors or waste hours on apps that don't really help you speak the language. Look, if you're like me, you probably took a few years of Spanish or some other foreign language growing up, and everything went in one ear and out the other. You didn't really learn anything applicable to everyday life. But Babbel's convenient courses have helped me learn real-life conversation skills in a different language. It's so easy to learn how to order food, ask for directions, speak to merchants, etc., without having to consult language apps while on vacation. Now, here's a special limited time deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/OUinsider. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/OUinsider, spelled BABBEL.com/OUinsider. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I was actually talking to the Sports Animal in Tulsa. I do a segment with them every Tuesday morning, and that was something that I brought up, was the fact that you have a smattering of SEC elites that feel like Oklahoma just isn't on the same level as a lot of other people in that conference. And it's weird because you also come across the Josh Pates of the world, the SEC Mikes of the world, even Paul Feinbaum's of the world that feel like Oklahoma is going to come in and surprise people a little bit. And the fact that winning 9, 8, 9, 10 games is a surprise, right, with the University of Oklahoma shows you how much they think their conference is better than everybody else. And I guess now the conference that we cover is better than everybody else. And so that to me, I agree with you, is a new phenomenon because, we've been doing this for a while, Parker. We walk up in there and, oh, you guys cover Oklahoma. That must be nice. That was the consensus in the Big 12.
That's Big 12 media days every year.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, that must be nice. I don't know how many times I heard that. That must be nice, man. That's awesome. That's really cool. I'm jealous, getting to cover something that is that elite. Well, you're just another also ran in the SEC as far as the elites go, right? Like,
yeah,
you're Georgia, you're in Alabama, you're in LSU, you're I guess I'm going to say it. OU fans are going to be mad. You're Texas in this conference. So there's another 4 or 5 that are on your level and probably better.
Oh,
as far as
SEC,
just the optics.
Well, and here's kind of another thing that we kept coming back to in the various conversations that I had with media members throughout the Omni Hotel in Dallas at SEC Media Days the last couple of days, is power in the SEC is very difficult to sustain.
Mm-hmm.
What Nick Saban did at Alabama is very much the exception and not the rule. There's a reason why we regard Nick Saban as pretty much unanimously the greatest college football coach of the modern era. And it's because it's not just about what he accomplished, it's about when he accomplished it. And you have seen LSU have their peaks and valleys. Florida has had their peaks and valleys. Tennessee won a national title in 1998, right? And you go across the rest of the SEC, Ole Miss and Mississippi State, they were at their respective zeniths in the 21st century at the exact same time. Back in 2014, they were 1-2 in the very first college football playoff poll. Auburn won a national title in 2010. Gene Chizik was fired 2 years later. It's very difficult to sustain success in the SEC year over year over year. And that's the reason why what Alabama has done over the Saban era, the last 17 seasons, stands as the most impressive feat in college football, both in an individual capacity when you look at Saban and a team capacity when you look at Alabama. So the league that Oklahoma is coming into right now, the league that they are stepping into for the moment, is dominated by Alabama and Georgia. Those two programs are still head and shoulders above the rest. And maybe that changes now that Saban's out the window and it's Kalen DeBoer that's the new head coach, the new head ball coach in Tuscaloosa. But for the moment, it's still Alabama and Georgia's league. Everybody else is chasing those two schools. And I think what is refreshing about that dynamic and knowing that it exists in the SEC is the knowledge that it is attainable, right? It's not as if you're chasing a standard that is never going to inch its way a little bit closer to you. No, every single SEC program, again, with the exception of Alabama, rises and falls in waves in the 21st century. And you can go back even further. So Georgia's the best team in college football right now. They're the cream of the crop in the SEC, but there will come a time, maybe soon, maybe not so soon, where they start to regress to the mean. And meanwhile, Oklahoma has a chance in the SEC, especially with Brent Venables at the helm, really entering what ought to be the prime of his head coaching career in the next few years. They have the chance to come up to Georgia's level and enter that discussion as one of the premier programs in the SEC. It's probably not a discussion that's save for an otherworldly season in 2024 they get inserted into immediately. But they're doing right now, they come in doing exactly what Texas is doing, exactly what Tennessee is doing, exactly what Ole Miss and LSU and a myriad of other SEC programs are actively doing, which is trying to catch up to Alabama and Georgia. Enjoying this episode of the Under the Visor podcast? There's plenty more exclusive content, including team and recruiting intel from the market's top insiders, when you become a subscriber. Head to OUinsider.com to get started today and join the vibrant online community of Sooner fans on the Rivals Network. It'll only cost you a few bucks a month, and take my word for it, we'll make it worth your while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to say that even though that seems to be the case, I don't think Brent Venables, I don't think Danny Stutzman, Billy Bowman, or Jackson Arnold really gave a crap about how they reviewed today. I think
no,
they do, but they don't, if that makes sense. I think they do in the aspect of they're going to use that as fuel. They don't in the fact that they're not going to let it eat at them in a negative way. And look, Brent Venables even came out and said it. We're not intimidated by this conference. Why would Oklahoma be intimidated by this conference? And I thought that was heady talk, year one coming into the SEC Media Day, how you're viewed, right? The optics of it all. And you come in and just kind of put your fist down and say, I am not scared of this. Not even remotely, a little bit. And neither is the team. And you got that same kind of talk from Billy Bowman. You got that same kind of talk from Danny Stutzman and even Jackson Arnold. There's some confidence with those guys. You can tell. And maybe it's because we cover them. Maybe it's because we see them on a day in and day out basis that we can read them a little bit differently than the rest of the national media can. You can tell they're a little pissed. They're a little chippy about it. Like Billy Bowman had some quotes today. Like he
Well,
he called crap soft. He called, I mean, like
oh
he
man, but I thought media day today for OU's players in particular, we all know what we're getting with Brent Venables, but with the players in particular, I thought it was exactly what it needed to be,
yeah.
which is at the end of the day, when all four teams had said their piece, gone through their sessions, and the day was a wrap, we weren't talking about some off color or egregious comment that one of Oklahoma's players made. They didn't take shots, they didn't throw shade, which you can't really do as the newcomer in the SEC. And I have to
Right.
imagine that was something that was communicated to these guys, not only by Brent Venables, but by the member of the OU athletic comms office is, hey, let's not go off script today. Let's make sure that in our first SEC media days, we are giving due respect to the other 15 members of this conference, and that we are not elevating ourselves to a tier that the rest of this conference does not regard us as worthy of yet. Let's go let our play this fall do the talking, as opposed to starting to write checks with our mouths in July before we've ever tasted the SEC. And so there was a little bit of fun had at the expense of Texas, and the horns down questions. I don't know why those still crop up in the year 2024. I guess it's a new conference, so that gets dredged
Yeah,
back up. But
it's new conference, same questions,
yeah, so
same
you got, and
yeah.
understandably so, you got some colorful, some fun answers from the guys on that question specifically. I think that was the question to which Billy Bowman responded. And I, I'm paraphrasing, but basically intoned that people who are offended by the horns down gesture are soft, which is exactly what you'd expect to hear from an Oklahoma fan or
Yeah.
player, anybody affiliated with the program. And there's always going to be that beef between OU and Texas. We know that. It's part of what makes college football great, is rivalries like that one. And so if I think the best case scenario today was you go in, you say your piece, give good insight on the team. Brent Venables gave some injury updates. That was great. But the players get the chance to step in front of the other members of the SEC media and show that they have respect for the conference that they're entering, and that they're prepared for the challenge, and that they're going to rise to the occasion in a competitive sense, but that they're not going to come off as egotistical or
Yep.
arrogant or generally possessive of a demeanor that is not yet welcome in the SEC because you've only been a member of this conference for 2 weeks. So the fact that the only shade, if you can even call it shade, of the day was thrown at Texas, I think indicates that this SEC Media Day experience for Oklahoma in their first year as a member of this conference went pretty flawlessly.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I thought there were some interesting quotes. We were talking before, you and I were talking before we hit record, and I think everybody, everybody, a lot of people have never done interviews with Brent Venables, particularly in the SEC conference. So there was probably 10, 15 reporters that walked up to me and they're like, is he like that in every setting? And I said, yes. And they said, that is awesome. And I said, well, it's awesome, except for when he goes off on like a 15-minute tangent.
His opening
On one
statement today
question.
was 5 minutes. Who had that on their bingo card?
Yeah, that was
I don't
a
think it
little.
even hit 5 minutes. I think it was like 4.5.
Yeah, he did really well until the recruiting question was brought up at the very end, and I tried to tweet out like a couple of quotes, but he kept going back and forth on different things. I was like, I turned to Jesse, I was like, I'm done trying to tweet this out because I can't make sense. Like if I tweeted out how he wrote it or how he said it, everybody would look at it and go, what are you talking about? So like I just gave up. And then in the electronic room, oh my gosh, the uh, Unfair Sports. That's a stupid. I hate that thing. Stupid thumbs up.
You're thinking of Jay Smith?
Jay Smith, yeah, Jay Smith asked a really eloquent question, and it was the basically the Oklahoma Sooners are really loaded on the defensive side of the ball. Returns a lot of experience, probably the most experience they've had on that side of the ball coming back, obviously since 21. But he wanted to really kind of equate it to previous Brent Venables defenses back from 99 to 2011. And he tried to see like where they ranked up, on paper with some of those. And Brent went on you'd have to watch it. I don't know. I don't even remember anything that was said because I don't think it even answered the question.
And this, folks, is an opportune time to remind you that all of the interviews from SEC Media Day that took place in the main ballroom are available in their entirety on the OU Insider YouTube channel. So if you want to hear what Brent Venables said, you want to hear what Danny Stutzman said, you want to hear what Billy Bowman said, and you want to hear what Jackson Arnold said. If you're the type of person that doesn't want to hear us talk about what they said, and there are many of those who do want that, but if you just rather hear it straight from the horse's mouth and draw your own conclusions on it, go to the OU Insider YouTube channel where all of those interviews are posted up.
Yes. And then Danny Stutzman, like we know Jackson Arnold's going to be an amazing interview. No matter you put a microphone in front of that guy, and he is the best, just far beyond his years, and he has been ever since he was a sophomore in high school. Like he's amazing. Danny Stutzman always goes through his interviews like really quickly, and like when we get in those scrums at the end of post game, and he'll just give like it's almost robotic, right? He was awesome today. Like, gave detailed, very thought-provoking and thoughtful answers. I asked him, because I think this is something that people need to know. In the SEC, the Iron Bowl is viewed, right, better than the Cotton Bowl. Now, again, I bring up Josh Pate all the time because he's very high on Oklahoma, a lot of things tradition-wise with Oklahoma, because he's been around it more than everybody else in the SEC. He's an SEC guy, but he's been around it. He's gone to the OU Texas game 3 times, and they've been the best 3 games he's ever been to, he says. And I said, Danny, if you're going to some SEC, normal SEC fan walks up to you and says, the Iron Bowl is better than the Cotton Bowl, how would you explain to them why you feel OU Texas, the Red River rivalry, is better than the Iron Bowl? And kind of tell us why you feel that way. And he goes, first off, I have a Longhorn tattoo on my body. It's on his thigh. It's an upside down tattoo. So he basically confirmed that to start off with. He goes, it means that much to me. You go to bed thinking about how big a deal it is. You look at every single person in the state of Oklahoma and every single person in the state of Texas, and you know how much it means to them. That's one game in the season and once a year that those 2 states compete against each other in the biggest sport in the United States. And it went on before me, and it will go on after me. But I get a little bit of that shine to prove myself and my state right. He's a Florida guy, and he calls Oklahoma his state. But that tells you how much he's embraced that over his years.
And the perspective from the Texas side is, rent-free. There are going to be people that think, and they say on social media and elsewhere, boy, Danny Stutzman can't get Texas out of his head. Yeah, because he's a true competitor.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest, Brandon. Anybody that's played organized sports at a level beyond Little League knows that when you are a part of a fierce rivalry, it's something you think about. And you put a target on the back of the opposition. And your motivation isn't necessarily, I wouldn't say your primary motivation is a desire to beat that rival, but it definitely fuels the fire.
Yep.
I know you've been a part of something like that. I've certainly been a part of something like that from an athletic standpoint. Neither of us have been a part of anything that even touches the Red
Correct.
River rivalry in terms of magnitude and the vitriol factor between those two schools. So I loved hearing that from Danny Stutzman. And I think what I love about Stutzman as he steps into his senior year is that it feels like he's finally begun to strike the balance between being himself and being professional. Because sophomore year, well, freshman year, Danny Stutzman, we didn't get to talk to for obvious reasons.
Yeah. And he was
Sophomore,
hurt a lot of that time too with his
yes,
elbow.
sophomore year, Danny Stutzman was still quite immature, and it came through in the way that he interacted with the media. And it was always fun, right? We enjoyed it, but he definitely had a Joker's persona. Didn't seem to take anything too seriously, even when they started losing football games. And there were some at the time that even vocalized, "Hey, maybe that isn't the greatest thing." You know, when you're losing football games
Yeah,
and you're still
we were on that
yeah, and you're still
bandwagon
acting
saying,
chipper
bro,
about everything. Maybe that isn't exactly where you want to be. And then junior year, Danny Stutzman. I mean, you take punch after punch in the mouth and go 6-7 in 2022. Junior year, Danny Stutzman was the exact opposite, and it
he's a
was kind of
robot.
bizarre.
Yeah.
You would get canned 15, 20-second answers from the guy that were very concise, straight to the point. He was respectful, like he would answer your question, but he would answer it in the most basic of terms. And that was it. And then it was on to the next. And now, if that's our first glimpse at senior year Danny Stutzman, I think that's going to be such a fun character because
Yeah.
he's discovered that balance between being who he is authentically, not having to put on show of being the PR machine that just has the right answer to everything and nothing more, and is kind of computerized in his actions and mannerisms, with the guy that we saw freshman and sophomore year, the guy that is one of the great personalities that has ever laced it up for the Crimson and Green with his sense of humor and his I don't even know what the prop, not quite uncouth, but
He's a showman.
colorful. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a showman. He's colorful.
Yeah. Well, I know you're setting me up here. You're throwing a softball up because we've talked about this off, but he was in everything you just said. Danny Stutzman said himself. He said, "Look, my freshman year, I was a freshman. I was immature. My sophomore year, he said, I didn't find myself in what it meant to be a leader until week 8, and that's because I was forced to do it." He goes, "I wasn't ready, but I had to." And he goes, then it was trial by fire throughout even his junior year. He said it was very hard for him to figure out how he needed to act with his teammates off the field. Everything that you just said, he said himself. And he said, I couldn't thank Brent Venables anymore because he said, not just with me, but the team, the program as a whole, where it was when he got here and where it is now culturally, he said it is. He goes, you can't, I don't, he goes, I don't even recognize it. And he said, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And so he was very grateful, very, I guess, appreciative of everything that Venables did. But he even goes on to talk about Ethan Downs and what he's meant to Danny Stutzman. He said he doesn't talk. Everything is by action. He said, I had to look at him and I had to want to be more like him in a lot of ways. He said he's out there 30 minutes before practice helping the young guys. I had to get better at that, he said. And I'm still trying to get on his level, which is almost impossible, he said, because, and I quote, that is the most selfless human being I've ever met in my life.
Yep.
And that's where we are as far as what we've seen covering this team 2021 to 2024 since those two arrived on campus. Night and day, man. That program is so different. And that's why, Parker, I found myself today going, am I underselling this team? Am I
Mm,
underselling this team?
that's the classic media day trap.
It is. And I'm about to jump in it and say,
Don't take the bait, Brandon. Don't do it. No, I will. I'll say this, and this is a good. This is an opportune juncture to levy this prediction. I'm going to make my first official prediction with regard to the 2024 season. I will put this prediction down right now, with the contingency that he plays every game for Oklahoma. As long as he is healthy for the full season,
Butkus
I think
finalist.
Danny Stutzman wins the Butkus.
Whoa, wins it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay.
I think he
Okay.
wins it, man. To
Okay.
me, like the SEC and
Do
the
you know
level of
why he wasn't a
competition.
finalist? And do you know why Bowman wasn't a finalist for the Thorpe? I do.
Why?
I don't think OU pushed it hard enough from what I was told. I talked to some people that vote and that
And
were
Air
on that
Force
committee,
did.
and they were pushing the people that were finalists. They said, and came from a person that does the Thorpe stuff. And I
Gotcha.
asked them, I said, how did y'all not have Billy Bowman on there? And they said, well, the guys that made it, their programs and their universities pushed them like it was a Heisman campaign.
Oh, okay. So it's a popularity contest.
That's what it seemed like.
Okay. That aside,
Okay.
The reason I say that about Danny Stutzman is because I really do think the competition, the level of competition that you have to ascend to in order to go toe to toe, week to week with the best of the best in the SEC, as Oklahoma is going to do, and hold your own. I think that's just going to cause a number of the players on this roster, not necessarily everybody, but I think there are a number of players on this roster that are going to find an extra gear this fall. And I think Danny Stutzman's one of those guys because he's absolutely one of the more competitive players that we have seen in the 21st century at the University of Oklahoma. I mean, that guy, his motor is running nonstop. And you kind of take that for granted because he is so good and you've just kind of come to expect it. But watch Danny Stutzman for 60 minutes any given Saturday. That dude is never loafing. He is always flying like a missile to the football. And it's part of the reason why, with a strong senior season, he has the chance to leave the University of Oklahoma as one of the top 5 leading tacklers in the history of this
Wow.
program. And so for me, especially because of the position that Danny Stutzman plays and the opportunity for production that is going to exist, and not only the opportunity for production, but the need for production that is going to exist when you're going up against this SEC slate, as well as the exposure and the publicity that so many of these high magnitude SEC football games is going to bring this fall. I'll bet you that if Danny Stutzman stays fully healthy, he is your Butkus Award winner at the end of the year. I think
That's big.
those are the lengths to which he can go as a senior. And I think that's why you come back, right? And in talking to Danny and talking to Steve, his father, who was instrumental in the decision to run it back at Oklahoma for one final season, it's
Yeah.
apparent that, that Danny's not doing it for the accolades, but the opportunity to truly leave his mark as an Oklahoma Sooner, to be a legend and not just one of the good players over the years, to be a legit campus legend at the University of Oklahoma. That was heavy on Danny Stutzman's mind this past offseason, right? It wasn't even the offseason yet. This past December when he made the decision to come back for his senior year.
So I think we would be remiss if we didn't give it up for Brian Odom and his eval of Danny Stutzman as well. You have to. You got to give it up to him. That was a heck of an eval. I mean, he's at North Texas right now. And Venables didn't walk into a really bad linebacker room, right? Like he walked into a pretty decent linebacker room when he showed up. And that's because Brian Odom set it up really well for him. And he gives credit to Brian Odom. He's done it before. He said that as far as like positions go, that was a position that was put together really well. That's why I always felt sorry for Brian when he had to go to USC, because he's better than that, right? Like, and he's going to move up. He's at North Texas now, but he
won't be there long.
No, he won't be there long. Billy Bowman, let's talk about him too, because you talked about, you put in your prediction for Danny Stutzman. I think he's going to be a finalist. You say winner. I think a lot of that is going to hinge on. So if you think Danny Stutzman's going to win, that means that Oklahoma is at least 8-4, right?
Yes.
So, there you go, fans. At least you kind of figured out. We haven't put in a formal prediction yet on the season, but that is kind of where both Parker and I are in that ballpark. We're not going to say where, but that's the ballpark. Billy Bowman, and again, I was talking to somebody today that's around the program a lot, and I asked him, and we've talked about this. Again, this goes in line with what I reported on OU Insider and what I reported on here several weeks ago, over a month ago, probably. Just a different mentality Billy Bowman has. And they lumped Danny Stutzman into this as well. This person said, look, those two came back. And as you said, Parker, they came back for a reason. And that reason is because they want to win and they want to show everybody that they have set the program up where it needs to be. That's how much those two love the University of Oklahoma, mind you. And I think with respect to Billy Bowman, yeah, it's the football program with him, but he's got a deep love across the board, obviously because of his fiance, right, or whatever, girlfriend, Jada Coleman.
You got it right the first time.
Okay. Jada Coleman, right, with the softball program. So it's a very deep, deep love for the university and the athletic department as a whole for him. And he wanted to make sure it was left the way he wanted it left when he heads off to the NFL. Again, told today exactly what I was told a month ago. He is not putting up with crap. If you're late to a workout, you better not be late to either one of those two groupings, whether it's Danny Stutzman or Billy Bowman's, because hell hath no fury what those two have on their teammates right now. And I thought that was interesting because Danny Stutzman said today that there are so many leaders on this team that everybody holds everybody accountable. So like if you're late, it's not just Billy Bowman and Danny Stutzman coming down on you. It's the other guys that have taken the reins of, okay, they're next in line to be those guys when they leave, getting all over you. This, again, culturally, everything just completely changed. That said, am I crazy thinking that not only will Danny Stutzman be a finalist for the Butkus Award, I think one of those two will be a Nagurski finalist, and I think one of those two, well, obviously Billy Bowman will be a finalist for the Thorpe. Is that wild? Is that too much? Is that a homer call? Because
no, I mean he should have been a finalist last year. So
correct, and I'm talking about the Bronco Nagurski. That's the defensive player of the year.
Yeah,
I think one of those two is up for that.
I mean, hey,
is that too far? Is that too? And here's why. Look at the stats both of those guys put up last year. How is that crazy to even say? It's not. 3 pick sixes, 6 total interceptions at the safety position.
Yeah. No,
Danny Stutzman had how many tackles? 132 years in a row, 3 years in a row, something like that.
And it's not often in the past that I have touted an Oklahoma player as a legitimate candidate for a
No,
national
me neither.
award at season's end. But look, if there are two guys, if there are two guys on Oklahoma's football team this year that no one would fault you for inserting their name into that conversation, early as it may be, it would be Danny Stutzman and Billy Bowman. I mean, those two are truly elite football players, elite enough that they don't even have to be here this season. That was a decision that both of them made of their own accord. The world was their oyster when their junior season ended. They could have gone to the NFL, made a whole heck of a lot of money, and left Oklahoma behind. And they decided, nope, we're going to give it one more go. We're going to see this thing through. We're going to lead this team into the SEC. And given what both of them did as juniors, given what is ahead of them, especially when you look at that schedule, and again, I mentioned the need to rise to another level. I'm confident those two guys are going to do it.
So I think our next podcast, obviously, we need to discuss recruiting, which we will at the end of this as well, but we need to do bold predictions for Oklahoma. And I'm going to throw one out here right now.
Okay.
It's bold.
Let's hear it.
Jackson Arnold will be third team All SEC quarterback.
Okay.
Is that bold?
I'll allow it.
I don't think it's that bold, but it's bold.
I mean, it's really not that bold. No. I mean, we're talking third team All SEC here.
I got another one.
Okay.
Gavin Salchuk will be first team All SEC running back.
Ooh, okay. Now that is a bold prediction. It's one I like. I like it. I think it's certainly on the table. I think that might be the one. That might be the one Oklahoma player that the rest of the nation is sleeping on right now. Because I think Deion Burke's performance in the spring game woke a lot of people up. They realized, oh, okay, that kid from Purdue, that ballyhooed transfer that wound up at Oklahoma, yeah, no, he actually is the real deal. So I think people know at this point. In March, maybe they didn't realize how good Deion Burks was. I think they realize it now. Gavin Sawchuk is the guy that maybe isn't getting as much pub nationally as he probably should, because it is all out there in front of him, man. He does have the potential and the opportunity to be one of the more productive and impactful backs in the country in 2024.
Yeah. And I guess I'll throw one more out. I've got like 7 or 8, and I'll save them for a different podcast. But this one, I think
we're gonna have to do a whole predictions podcast.
But that's what I want it to be. Is just a predictions podcast. I think that should be our next go, is a predictions podcast, because we're getting so close to fall camp that we're gonna have plenty of material here pretty soon that we're not gonna have to do this crap. But and then obviously the following week you've got Floyd Boucard, and then you've got the Party of the Palace, the Sooners Under the Stars. Like, we've got plenty to talk about the last week and a half of July, but he was talked about quite a bit today by Venables, by Bowman, by Stutzman. So I'm just going to go with it. Dominic Williams, first team All SEC defensive tackle.
You know, at some
I don't
point,
even know if that's bold, but
well, at some point, and maybe it won't be till this season, but we're going to have to get Brian Clinton on one of these podcasts with us, because Brian is obviously a tape grinder and a pretty astute one. And, you know, we drove down to SEC Media Days together, and on the way back, we were conversing about all things Oklahoma football, as we do on the road. And
especially if Brian's in the car, because he's always got something going on in his head when it comes to that stuff. Trust me.
Yep. And one of the things he said was, man, I really do think that Dominic Williams is just going to have so much more leeway to really shine in Oklahoma's defensive scheme than he did in TCU's defensive scheme. And if that's the case, yeah, he'll be in that conversation at year's end.
Agreed. I think right now, if I was going to pick, I think him and Walter Nolan would be probably your first team. That's just my gut. And maybe I'm probably missing somebody off the top of my head. But anyways, not Oklahoma. Well, it is Oklahoma related, but do we have the exact quote from Drinkwitz on
The
Caden Green?
STIs quote, is that the one you're referring to?
Not so much the STIs quote. I don't know why he would even.
Yeah, that was an interesting choice.
Yeah, the acronym is not something I would want to roll with or have even put next to my name, but or an STD, which I guess would have been the other way to put it. But I was more or less talking about how he talked about that recruitment and how he said, like at least like a lot of people don't even hide it anymore, but this dude's acting like they were innocent and that they were surprised that
I plead the fifth on this entire conversation. You all can draw your own conclusions from what Eli Drinkwitz
I'm
said.
just calling BS. I'm just calling BS. Like, dude, just own it. Say, yeah, we bought him. Daddy wanted money. Then we bought him. Am I saying anything that is like, that's been out there, dude? Like, what I just said is what everybody's already reported. I mean, you're acting like you can't just say it. Like what I said, everybody has already said it.
Listen,
It's not, and I don't think they're bad people for it. As a matter of fact, I applaud them because here's the deal. Anybody in those situations are stupid if you turn down that type of money. You're stupid. And that's why I don't have an issue with it. But I just wish people would just own it, right? Like just own it. I think the player and the families has owned it. They're not going to publicly own it, but I think they've owned it to the sense that they're not going to deny all this, right? Like, but why not drink? Like, you're not going to get in trouble. Who can do what to you? Just admitting it. Am I speaking too much? I don't think so. I think I'm saying what everybody else knew and what's been out there, like everybody's talked about, right? That he didn't want to go and people in his family did, and that's how it went. And now he's happy. Everybody's happy. But why not own it? Be like, hey, man, they reached out to us. You didn't have to say, if he could have left it before, he didn't have to say before or after the portal. He just said, all he had to do was say, they reached out to us. They got in touch with our collective and we made it work. That's all you have to say. Right? Like, that's not illegal, but at least you own it. He pretended like he said, we weren't even sure we were going to be able to get him. What? And you're just being quiet because you don't want to.
I'm just, you know what? I'll let you be the one to incur the wrath of the Missouri fans today.
But I didn't say anything bad. I'm propping them up for it.
I mean, I
have not said anything bad. All I said is I wish Drink would have just owned it and said it exactly like I said it. I applaud them for out NILing Oklahoma. Like, there's nothing that I've said that is negative towards the University of Missouri. And there's nothing I've said negative towards the Green family. There's nothing I've said negative towards Oklahoma. They did what they needed to do.
Fans in general, especially Missouri fans, they have a way of shoehorning the things you say. So just be prepared for that.
Okay. Be mad at me for it. I find no issue in what was done. I mean, when I say no issue, I'm not big on the tamper part, but that's part of college football. So I'm not going to sit there and hate on it because guess what? Everybody does it. It's a thing in college football right now. And until they get it under wraps, I'm not going to hate on you for it. So Missouri fans, don't be mad at me. Oklahoma fans, don't be mad at me for saying props to Missouri for out NIL in Oklahoma, because that's exactly what happened. So it is what it is. I just wish people would own it. That's all I'm saying. Don't sit there and say you didn't know he was going to come. You knew. Just say they reached out. We talked to him. He visited. They talked to the collective. He's at Oklahoma. He's at Missouri now, and he's going to start. That's all that needs to be said, and you could have just moved on. But anyways, is there anything else that really stood out to you about SEC? You want to know what?
What's that?
I'll say this. The media in general, like, there's like really, obviously their media is clicky as it is, right? Like there's
Very
clicky. It doesn't bother me. I don't really care. SEC, not so much.
No.
It's not clicky at all. Like I think our beat is probably the most clicky of the beats, right? Like it's just because they have a big group of guys that are really good friends, right? And not like clicky in a bad way. Like they're just very close knit group. Our beat is, as far as like a certain group of people, but they're still nice people, which I thought was. But I thought was really interesting was that everybody was just socializing with everybody, which was not like the Big 12. Would you agree with that?
No,
My cousin
was
Shane
definitely
just came and sat down right next to us and just like chilled with us.
there
off
was
that
definitely more
SEC
of a
podcast.
communal type of vibe to
Mm,
SEC media days. That was noticeable, certainly.
yep.
Now there isn't really a Vanderbilt beat, obviously. There isn't really a
They're
Missouri
not.
beat either.
Yeah. No, well, I was in there when Missouri, the player, I don't know what player, defensive lineman it was. I did get a question in though.
Really?
I did. I stayed in
Very
there just
nice.
because I wanted to ask an Oklahoma question. But I told Colin Kennedy, I asked him if he thought it would be ballsy if I went in on the Caden Green stuff, followed it up, and I told him a question I was going to ask him. He goes, "Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do
Oh
it."
boy.
And I won't say it publicly, but um, I did ask. I asked if Coach Drinkowitz has asked or has talked to the players about what OU and um Missouri used to be like prior before the last decade happened and they were in the SEC and Oklahoma State in the Big 12. And he said no. He goes, I didn't even know it was a rivalry until my social media started blowing up. And now I know just how deep it is. He essentially said it was more of a fan deal than the player deal, which but I was really disappointed. I really thought Drink was going to take a shot at Oklahoma. I was hoping for it. Not because I wanted to hate on Drinkwitz, just because
For
I
the
loved
content's sake.
for the content's sake. That would have been awesome. That would have been awesome, but he didn't. I have to give Drinkwitz props though. I thought his opening speech about Mike Leach was amazing
Yes.
and
Yes. We'll fully concur with that.
was awesome. And I hope it works out the way it's supposed to, and that he gets on the ballot and voted in early into the College Football Hall of Fame, because that's the right thing to do. He changed college football. The Pirate will forever be maybe the greatest offensive mind of all time, to be honest. So, let's talk about Floyd Boucard.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good place to close the book.
Yeah.
We'll have to address this as well on OU Insider Live on Wednesday, because I sense there'll be some late movement here. How much, I'm not really sure, but the
Shocker.
decision hasn't been made for Boucard. And the latest that I've heard, Brandon, is it's not Miami. And if it's
Miami's not going to take him, from what I've heard.
why?
I don't know.
I just that that seems odd to me. But
it's true. Like everybody I've talked to around the Miami program, people that cover it have said they have other people, other players in mind that they're after. And for weeks, they have been telling me he will not be a part of their class.
so they're not going to take him, but Oklahoma and Alabama would.
I think they have, I would have to go back and look, but I think they have some pretty high up guys that they're after right now.
Okay, I'll allow it. Regardless, it's not
Yeah.
going to be Miami. So that's kind of been
now.
well, yes. Then, of course, that's not a threat that's going to go away. That's the problem, because what happens if Miami strikes out on some of those elite targets that they're allegedly after a defensive tackle? Then okay, you can foresee them making a late run and potentially a successful run of Floyd Boucard. He goes to Miami Central. That is not a factor that's going to just go away, disappear, right? But if the decision on July 20th is really going to come down to OU and Alabama, as it
Is it
now
20th or
appears,
21st?
20th.
Okay.
Saturday. I feel good about Oklahoma, Brandon. I feel probably better about Oklahoma than I have at any point throughout this process. I don't know for sure whether they get him,
Yeah.
but I certainly feel better than I have at any point throughout.
Yeah, I agree. You and I were talking about this earlier today. The USC thing, again, we keep throwing the analogy and kind of the comparison to Taylor Tatum's recruitment. And it continues to feel like it's trending in that direction of where like USC. So Oklahoma, yeah, like kind of like USC just kind of faded a little bit. And when you're struggling to keep elite defensive line, particularly from that region that Floyd Boucard's at, and that Florida, Georgia kind of region, it makes it harder for him to probably look at it and go, that's where I want to go, is all the way across the country, 3,000 miles from my family, which it's not a big deal for him because he's lived in
He has lived
Alabama,
in the
Canada,
last
Alabama,
3 years. I believe it's
Florida,
Canada, Connecticut,
That's right. That's the other one.
Alabama, and now Florida.
Yep. So like a location isn't really that big of a deal, but I think the relationship that he has with Todd Bates, and I know fans hate when we start bringing the relationship part up in, but it matters because if you finish second in this, and let's say he goes somewhere and decides, you want to know what? Yeah, I'm playing here. I'm making plays. I'm doing well, but I'm not really feeling it as far as culture, as far as the rest of things outside of football go. I'm going to hop in the portal. The relationships that Todd Bates and everybody's built and the recruitments that they finished second on, now it becomes very important.
Yeah.
That's why we talk about that. And I know you guys hate it. Like, well, they signed somewhere else. Relationships don't matter. It's all about NIL.
And that's just not true
time
either.
Being,
like those are those are the ones you remember where Oklahoma had the best relationship with him and then he signed somewhere else. You don't pay attention to the guys that Oklahoma gets.
Correct.
Because they did such a great job in the relational department. This is a really good staff when it comes to relationships. This is a really accomplished staff when it comes to relationships. They land guys, elite guys, year after year because of relationships. Cortez Mills is a great recent example, the highest rated player in Oklahoma's entire 2025 class. Emmett Jones won that battle with relationships. That's how Oklahoma won out for Cortez Mills. And it's been the case with dozens of players over the Venables era. And yet there are some folks who still want to act like the ones that have gotten away, be it Jordan Renaud or Williams Winery or Anthony Agumero or what have you. There are those that want to act like anytime Oklahoma has the best relationship with the guy, it's like a death knell or something. No, in today's day and age, with
It's important.
NIL being what it is, you're not going to win every single battle for a kid with whom you have the best relationship, but you'll win a lot of them. And
Yep.
this staff has won a lot of them.
I what you said, I agree. And for every Anthony Ogumuro or Williams Winery or you brought up Jordan Renaud or who else? I guess Smith Arogbo.
Yeah.
There is a
Yep.
Jaden Jackson. There is a David Stone. There is and everybody's gonna go, well, David Stone's from Oklahoma.
Michael Boganowski.
Michael Boganowski of the worlds. There's Peyton Bowens of the worlds. There was at the time there was a Caden Green, right? That was the relationship won that out until it didn't.
Yeah. Again, you can go on down the list. Pick any of Oklahoma's signees from the 2024 class and relationships. If it wasn't the A1 factor, or if it wasn't the 1A factor, it was the 1B factor.
Eugene Brooks. That was a big one. So, all right, man. Was fun. First SEC day that Oklahoma was a part of in the books. That was awesome. I have my Xbox right behind me here in the hotel room. I'm going to get in a couple more games of college football 25 before I hit the hay.
Man,
and then
it's past midnight. I'm so tired.
Yep.
I don't know how you're still.
I am too, but bro, I gotta get my recruits, man. I gotta build this
Team no sleep.
up. Team no sleep right now. I'm living it like I'm back in college when college football first came out. So, all right, man. If you're not on OU Insider, go and sign up.
Do that.
$9.95. Get you a month. Just try us out. A lot of content coming from SEC Media Days coming right here, right now, throughout the week. A lot of recruiting stuff. Michael Fasusi, Floyd Boucard, Party in the Palace is next, a week and a half from now. Sooners on the Stars, a week and a half from now. Both of those events, one's for 2025 alone. That's Party in the Palace. Sooners on the Stars will have all the top 2026, 27, 28. They will come in, they will camp, they will do a half-day camp, and then they will have a good barbecue, hang out, do the whole recruiting stuff. It's a big, fun event for everybody involved, a lot of big-time targets, and we're going to have that covered for you on OU Insider VIP, plus fall camps rolling around. I have some team notes, some off-season team notes coming for you on OU Insider VIP this week.
Very nice.
To top off everything else that's been going on with the SEC Media Days. So a lot of team coverage, a lot of recruiting. We're going to have that for you. OU Insider VIP. Go try us out. OUinsider.com. Sign up. Become a member with thousands and thousands and thousands of OU fans that are already on there right now. Subscribe to this channel right here, right now. All the content that's going to be coming up with the fall camp, everything will be right here. Interviews, everything right here on OU Insider, YouTube, or whatever podcast platform you subscribe to us. All right. For Parker Thune, my name is Brandon Drum. You guys have a blessed day. See you later.